You've been asking for money for years, and yet it still feels far away. Have you ever wondered why? The truth is, the more you ask, the more the universe understands that you don't have. Every request carries the frequency of scarcity, not abundance. And here's the paradox. The harder you chase, the faster it runs. What if the problem has never been how much you work, but how much your consciousness still vibrates as someone who needs to beg? Today, you'll learn how to stop chasing money, and instead, make it chase you. Money is not a fixed object sitting somewhere out there. It's an energetic frequency that responds to the identity you assume. Imagine looking at your reflection in a mirror. The more desperately you try to grab it, the more it slips away. Why? Because the attempt itself comes from absence. The quantum field doesn't reward force, it mirrors consciousness. This is why so many affirmations, visualizations, and endless techniques have left you exhausted. They were built on the vibration of lack. Maybe you're tired of trying everything and still feeling stuck, but today you'll finally understand why. This isn't about attracting something new, it's about tuning into a reality where the wealth already exists, waiting for you to step into it. And once you shift identity, the universe has no choice but to respond. It's fascinating how so many people go through life believing they must always be asking for what they want, especially money. This habit creates a constant sense of urgency, as if their consciousness is trapped in a bubble of scarcity within the field of the universe. Every time someone repeats to themselves, "I need this, I need that," they're actually reinforcing to their reality that they don't have it. Each word becomes a code that blocks the natural flow of what could already be on its way. Picture yourself on a treadmill. You run, you sweat, your heart races, yet deep down you know you haven't moved an inch. That's the perfect metaphor for the asking cycle. Every step, every effort unconsciously affirms the thought, "I haven't arrived yet." And when it comes to money, this movement creates an invisible prison. The frequency vibrating in your mind keeps signaling lack, and the quantum field responds by reflecting that exact state. In my own journey, I've been there. I remember sleepless nights, begging the universe to solve my debts or send opportunities my way. But the more I insisted on asking, the more anxious I became. Fear grew, uncertainty expanded, and my reality mirrored that turbulence. Asking turned into a painful reminder that I didn't have. It kept me stuck, locked into a cycle of scarcity that felt endless. The irony is, the stronger the desire, the further away the result seemed. It was as if money had become a mirage in the desert. I kept running toward the image, but never close enough to touch it. That's the danger of living only in asking. No matter how sincere the prayers, the visualizations, or the affirmations, if the underlying frequency is lack, the quantum field can only return one thing: more lack. A practical example is easy to see. When someone spends the whole month thinking, "I hope I can pay the bills," they're vibrating worry. They may scrape by with the exact amount, but they never build real abundance. It's like surviving on life support. Their consciousness remains restricted, operating in constant emergency mode. The outcome is predictable: more scarcity, more stress, and a reality that feels like an endless cycle of running without rest. Now think about the emotional toll. The act of asking not only reinforces lack in the outer world, but also erodes self-worth. A pattern forms where the person sees themselves as small before the universe, as if incapable of generating money on their own. That feeling, repeated daily, shapes identity. And when identity is built on scarcity, the field only echoes back what's being broadcast most consistently. This is why understanding the asking loop is crucial. Until you see that asking is like running on a treadmill, you stay trapped in the illusion of movement without progress. But there is another way, a less obvious path, that isn't about insisting on what's missing, but about discovering a new frequency. And it's in that opening where the next step begins, a powerful transition that can shift your entire financial reality. There comes a moment when you realize that the constant asking has done nothing but drain your energy. That's when the shift begins. Understanding that money isn't something you chase, but something you pull. This shift is subtle but radical. Instead of vibrating as someone who lacks, you step into the frequency of someone who already has. The quantum field doesn't reward desperation, it mirrors consciousness, and the universe responds not to words, but to the state you embody. Think of clothing. You don't wait to feel confident before wearing your best suit or dress. You wear it first, and the feeling follows. That's the essence of the pulling frequency. You put on the outfit of abundance before your reality reflects it. If you walk into a room with shoulders high, eyes clear, and energy calm, people treat you differently. It's not magic, it's coherence. You've stepped into a version of yourself that already resonates with money and value. I remember a season in my life when I stopped introducing myself as broke or struggling. Instead, I started saying, "I'm building something important." That tiny shift in language carried a different vibration. Friends began offering opportunities, strangers opened doors, and suddenly my reality shifted. It wasn't that the universe dropped a suitcase of money at my door. It was that my consciousness had moved to a new station, and the field aligned with it. Daily life is full of these small choices. Imagine you wake up and ask, "Why don't I have enough?" You instantly lower your frequency. But if you ask, "What would someone wealthy do with their morning?" you start living differently. Maybe you exercise, maybe you read, maybe you plan instead of scrolling endlessly. Those choices stack up. Over time, your reality bends to the version of you who isn't waiting but already being. The emotional connection here is deep. When you stay in asking, you feel like a beggar, always at the mercy of the universe. But when you step into pulling, you become an emanator. You stop waiting for permission. Think about the confidence of someone who knows their worth. They don't plead for opportunities, they create them. That shift in consciousness sends a signal through the quantum field that others can feel. People trust, doors open, and value flows. It's the same principle you see in relationships. Have you noticed that when someone is desperate for attention, they repel it? But when someone is grounded, fulfilled, not needing constant validation, people are drawn to them. That's the pulling frequency in action. It's not about manipulation, it's about coherence. The universe can't help but mirror the wholeness of someone who already feels complete, and money behaves no differently. This is why shifting from asking to pulling is such a game changer. Once you start wearing abundance before you see it in your bank account, you break the old loop. You stop being the beggar at the door and become the one who radiates value. And that radiance is impossible to ignore in the field. But what happens when we compare this to tuning a radio, where the right frequency is not about force, but about harmony? That's where the next key unlocks. Imagine turning the dial on an old radio. You don't create the music. You simply tune in to the frequency that's already broadcasting. That's how money works in the quantum field. It's not about conjuring something out of thin air, nor endlessly asking the universe for it. It's about finding the right vibration within your consciousness. Once you tune in, the reality you experience begins to play a very different song. Think about the last time you drove through static on the radio. The station was there, but until you aligned the dial, all you got was noise. The same thing happens with abundance. If your thoughts are scattered, if your energy is drenched in worry, your signal is just static. The universe hasn't disappeared, it's still transmitting. But until your inner frequency shifts, you'll keep hearing distortion instead of the clear sound of prosperity. In my life, I once had a period when opportunities felt scarce. I was asking constantly, almost begging for things to change. Then one day, instead of repeating the same old phrases, I shifted my focus. I started acting as if opportunities were already flowing. Within weeks, a new job offer came, unexpected income appeared, and people reached out with collaborations. It felt like the radio had clicked into tune. My consciousness had finally matched the broadcast of abundance. Consider a simple example from everyday life. When someone shows up to an interview stressed, anxious, and desperate, the interviewer feels it. The signal is static, and the outcome often reflects that. But when someone arrives calm, confident, and grounded, the entire room responds differently. That person didn't suddenly create value. They tuned into a version of themselves that was already valuable. The field mirrored it back. This analogy also explains why forcing doesn't work. You can't twist the radio knob violently and expect harmony. You only get more noise. In the same way, trying to control every detail of how money arrives creates resistance. It's not about squeezing harder, but softening into coherence. When your consciousness stops fighting and starts aligning, the quantum field adjusts effortlessly. It feels less like chasing and more like receiving. And isn't it true that music feels different depending on how present you are? Two people can hear the same song, but only one is moved because they're attuned to it. That's how abundance flows too. You could be surrounded by opportunities, but if your mind is tuned to lack, you won't even notice. Shifting frequency is less about effort and more about awareness, changing the station from scarcity to wealth. This is why the radio metaphor is so powerful. It shows us that abundance isn't a future possibility, but a present broadcast. Your role isn't to beg for a signal, but to align with it. And once you've tuned in, the song of abundance becomes impossible to ignore. But how do you make sure that not just your thoughts, but also your body and emotions align with that station? That's where coherence takes center stage. Tuning into abundance isn't just about thoughts, it's about coherence. Imagine trying to play a song when the instruments are all out of sync. That's what happens when your mind says, "I'm wealthy," but your body still trembles with fear and your emotions are tied to scarcity. The quantum field doesn't listen to words. It responds to alignment. When consciousness harmonizes thought, feeling, and action, reality has no choice but to reflect it. Think of it this way. If you're affirming abundance while checking your bank account with dread, the signals clash. The frequency you're broadcasting is confusion, not clarity. And confusion doesn't pull money. It's like trying to broadcast two radio stations at once. What comes out is noise. The universe mirrors coherence, not contradiction. To shift the field, you need all parts of you to move as one. An actor offers the perfect analogy. On stage, they don't just speak the lines. They breathe, move, and feel as if they truly are the character. That's the kind of embodiment abundance demands. If you were already wealthy, how would you walk? How would you breathe? How would you greet others? When you step into that role fully, you're not pretending, you're tuning your entire system into the same station of abundance. In my personal journey, I discovered that my posture told the truth louder than my words. I could affirm wealth all day, but my shoulders slumped, my tone carried worry, and my habits screamed scarcity. When I deliberately shifted how I carried myself, speaking slower, breathing deeper, even smiling more, I noticed people responded differently. Opportunities opened because the field was echoing not just my thoughts, but my embodied consciousness. Everyday life provides countless moments to practice this alignment. At the grocery store, instead of rushing in panic about prices, breathe as if you've already got more than enough. At work, instead of hiding your ideas out of fear, present them with the confidence of someone who knows they're valuable. These subtle shifts align mind, body, and emotion. Over time, the frequency stabilizes, and your reality follows suit. And isn't it true that the smallest incoherences can sabotage results? Saying you're abundant while gossiping about lack, or visualizing wealth while secretly doubting yourself, scatters your energy. Coherence means catching those micro-contradictions. It's not about perfection, but consistency, closing the gap between what you think, what you feel, and how you act. The universe notices, and the quantum field adjusts accordingly. That's why coherent assumption is such a game changer. It's no longer about wishing or repeating words, but about becoming the person who already lives that state. And once all parts of you align, abundance flows almost naturally. But how do we take this principle into the daily grind, where bills, jobs, and obligations test our coherence? That's where practice turns theory into transformation. One of the most powerful shifts in consciousness happens when you stop waking up asking, "How much money will I get today?" and start wondering, "What value can I create today?" That single question flips the frequency. Instead of vibrating as a receiver, waiting for the universe to deliver, you embody the role of a source, and the quantum field always amplifies the one who radiates value, because coherence attracts reflection. Think about your morning routine. If your first thought is fear, "Will I have enough to cover the bills?" you're beginning the day in scarcity mode. But if you start with, "How can I serve? Who can I help? What can I build?" you've already changed the station. That doesn't mean ignoring money. It means realizing that reality bends when you give first. It's planting seeds instead of staring at empty soil and begging it to sprout. In my own life, this shift changed everything. I remember when freelancing felt unstable. I would obsessively calculate, asking how much I might earn that month. But when I decided to focus on offering more, better service, more creativity, more dedication, clients started multiplying. The universe mirrored my focus. Instead of chasing payments, opportunities found me. It was proof that the field listens more to value than to begging. You can try this in simple ways. If you're in sales, instead of pushing for commissions, focus on truly solving a client's problem. If you're an employee, don't ask, "When's the raise?" You'll ask, "How can I make this role shine?" Even at home, instead of calculating how much love or attention you're getting, offer it freely. This isn't self-sacrifice, it's alignment. And in that alignment, money and opportunities flow back almost effortlessly. The emotional connection here is profound. When you operate from getting, you feel small, dependent, anxious. But when you operate from creating, you feel powerful, expansive, grounded. It's like the difference between being a bucket waiting for drops and becoming the spring that never runs dry. That inner shift rewires your identity, and identity always dictates how the quantum field reflects your reality. For 7 days, you can test this yourself. Wake up and journal. What value will I create today? Then act on it, even if small. Maybe it's a smile to a stranger, a creative idea at work, or a thoughtful gesture for a friend. Notice how, as you radiate, doors open. This isn't mystical, it's resonance. You're broadcasting a new frequency, and the universe can't help but respond. That's why this daily practice matters so much. It keeps your consciousness steady, moving from lack into contribution. Over time, your reality transforms, not because you forced it, but because you became someone whose presence generates wealth. And once you see how simple practices shift everything, the next step is learning specific techniques to reprogram your financial patterns from the inside out. Financial reprogramming isn't about repeating mantras while ignoring your bills. It's about transforming the emotional frequency behind every choice. Think about paying bills. Most people sigh, complain, and reinforce lack. But what if you saw it as proof that money flowed through you, that you had the power to exchange energy with the universe? That simple shift in consciousness turns scarcity into gratitude, and gratitude always multiplies in the quantum field. When you buy something, the usual thought is, I'm losing. But in truth, every purchase is circulation. Money is not leaving you, it's flowing through you, like water in a river. If you hoard water, it stagnates. If you let it flow, it stays fresh. Reality works the same way. Seeing spending as energy moving, not disappearing, changes your relationship with wealth. Suddenly, your field reflects abundance instead of fear. One practice I started years ago was blessing my expenses. Each time I paid rent, I whispered, "Thank you for shelter." Each time I bought groceries, "Thank you for nourishment." At first it felt silly, but within months my anxiety about money dropped. The universe seemed to mirror back my gratitude, bringing unexpected income and support. Gratitude shifted my frequency, and the quantum mirror adjusted my reality. You can anchor this shift with words. Before making any financial decision, pause and say, "I am the source, not the end." This phrase rewires your identity. Instead of feeling like a consumer draining resources, you step into being a fountain. And when your consciousness adopts that role, opportunities naturally flow back. The field bends to the belief of who you are, not what you plead for. Another example, imagine you lend someone money. If you stew in resentment, you vibrate loss. But if you view it as energy invested in another's journey, you remain in coherence. Does this mean being reckless? Not at all. It means maintaining the frequency of generosity rather than scarcity. And ironically, the more generous your vibration, the more the universe finds ways to replenish you. Think about how businesses thrive. The ones that succeed aren't those clinging desperately to every cent. They're the ones circulating value, reinvesting, and trusting the flow. On a personal level, the same rule applies. If you see money as static, you choke its flow. But if you see it as movement through the quantum field, you begin to live in rhythm with abundance. Reality opens. That's why these practices are more than rituals. They're rewiring tools. Each time you pay, spend, or decide with gratitude and identity rooted in being the source, you break the old cycle. You stop asking in fear and start radiating as one aligned with wealth. But what does it mean, on a deeper level, to see money not as punishment or blessing, but as feedback from the universe itself? That's where the final key reveals itself. At its core, money is not just currency, it's feedback. It reflects the dialogue between your consciousness and the universe. When financial challenges appear, they're not punishments, they're signals. The quantum field mirrors your inner state back to you with precision. If your frequency is fear, you see scarcity. If it's trust and value, you see opportunity. Reality is simply answering the vibration you broadcast most consistently. This perspective changes everything. Imagine viewing a financial setback not as failure, but as initiation. It's the universe testing whether you'll collapse into asking again or rise into coherence. Just as a muscle grows under resistance, your wealth consciousness expands under pressure. Challenges stretch your identity, forcing you to release the outdated beliefs that once kept you running on the treadmill of lack. In my own life, some of my greatest breakthroughs came right after moments of collapse. When a deal fell through or when debt looked overwhelming, I had a choice: to panic or to lean deeper into trust. Each time I chose alignment, something unexpected happened. A new door opened, an opportunity emerged. It felt as if the field was saying, "Good, you passed, now here's the next level." That's the essence of initiation. Think about the contrast between two people facing the same situation. One loses a job and says, "I'm ruined." The other loses a job and says, "The universe is redirecting me." Same event, different frequency, and the outcomes reflect it. One spirals into scarcity, the other unlocks new paths. This is not blind optimism, it's the science of the quantum field. Your interpretation becomes your invitation for what comes next. Quantum wealth consciousness also means recognizing that true abundance begins inside. If you feel poor, no amount of money will fix it. If you feel whole, even the smallest resources multiply. Everyday gratitude, self-respect, and alignment form the foundation. Once those are stable, wealth expands outward. The universe can only trust you with more when you've proven you can embody abundance with less. A simple exercise is this. Each time you face a financial worry, ask yourself, what is this teaching me about my identity? Instead of collapsing into fear, treat it as feedback. Did you spend from insecurity? Did you act from desperation? Or did you align with value? By decoding these lessons, you reprogram your frequency. And the more aligned your identity, the faster the field shifts your reality. That's why quantum wealth consciousness is not the end, but the beginning. It's a new way of living, where challenges become signals, and money becomes a mirror. Once you see this, you no longer beg or fear. You engage with life as a creator. And that opens the doorway to practices that not only attract abundance, but sustain it, allowing you to live in coherence with the infinite possibilities of the universe. Money was never something outside of you. It has always been the mirror of the consciousness you choose to live from. That's why the real shift is simple yet radical. Stop asking, start pulling. Just like water doesn't try to be wet, it simply is. Abundance is not something to chase, it's something to embody. And the moment you assume that state, the universe reflects it back without resistance. This is your invitation to take gentle but firm responsibility for your own vibration, because no one else can broadcast the frequency for you. Now, I want you to anchor this in the field. Comment below just one word, your word, that represents the energy you're stepping into today. It could be flow, value, presence, or confidence. And writing it isn't just engagement. It's declaring a new vibrational signature to the quantum mirror of your reality. And if this message aligned you with the rhythm of abundance, like the stream that never runs dry, then keep this frequency alive. Like, share, and subscribe, not out of obligation, but to stay tuned into this state of wealth consciousness. And remember, if this video realigned you with the universe of abundance, the next one is essential. It will take you even deeper,